We're delighted to have you all here this morning as we talk about the risk, reward, and opportunity with GDPR and its Swiss equivalent FADP. Just so that you all know, we're recording because we can send this out to everyone afterwards, and you can share with anyone in your team if you'd like. And with that, I'd like to just introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Tamara, the co-founder of Alta Digital, and I'm joined by my fellow co-founder Alice Morgen and by Caroline Perriard, the co-CEO of Branded. Just to orient you all where we are, I'm in Zurich, Alice is in London, and Caroline is in Lausanne. And her colleague Carrie, who's in the marketing, she's sitting in around outside of Amsterdam, I think it was, she said. Caroline advises companies about legal and compliance of their digital properties, whether that be websites, social media, e-commerce, and much more across Europe. And Alice and I provide digital marketing consulting services with a focus on SEO and content marketing and user experience for businesses across Europe as well in a variety of industries. And this is the second time that we've teamed up with Caroline to talk about data privacy. The last time we presented was at a live event, if we all can remember what those are, here in Zurich, just before the GDPR laws came into force. So first up, Caroline is going to give you a legal view with some interesting insights into what's changed and how companies are adapting. And then Alice will take a look at the topic from a marketing point of view. Following their presentation, we will go on to a Q&A. So please pop your questions into the chat as we go along, and I will collect them and then feed them out to Alice and Caroline after the presentation. And we're going to try to address as many questions as we can during the time that we have. And we also will send you a useful little handout following the presentation. So at some point tomorrow, with some extra content and the information that we presented today, so you don't have to try to take notes. You can just sit back and enjoy. So without further ado, let's get started, and over to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Tamara. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see your names here. So what I would like to do is to start by explaining why we lawyers think that the law can also help the company to enhance data protection and then leverage the brand. We believe that data protection and privacy will bring some benefits to the company. The company needs to work on two sides. One is being the legal side, and then also thinking about the company principle. The legal principle, I mean, most of you know GDPR, you know a bit of data protection, you know that you need the legal basis to collect personal data. You need a contract, you need to gather consent, you might have legitimate interest to promote your products. There must be a legal basis. The use must be legitimate, so there must be a purpose, a goal, why we collect this data for marketing purposes. Definitely, we want to send newsletter, we want to attract customer on a website, we want to know more about their behavior. Proportionality and minimization are also two principles that are very important, but also quite difficult to manage internally. We hear about companies having way too much data because we collect, and then we forget to delete, or we forget to just go to the essential. And security, this is also an important point. Security measures need to be put on the way we collect the data, but also how we deal with subcontractors, with third parties. So security measures are definitely one side that needs to be looked at by companies. But it's not the only side. This is the law. But I think also what is more interesting for us is to raise the question internally, what do we do as a company? What are our values? How do we want to handle data? Why do we gather so much personal data or any other data that we might be using for analytics? And how transparent do we want to be? What is kind of our vision? If we're saying on a website we care about privacy, fine, but how transparent, how much into the details do we agree to disclose our practices? But this, let's say 5 or let's say 7 principles are going then to lead to some benefits for the company. First, this will increase trust, and then Alice will really come into this trust and respect that privacy can leverage. Data is bringing financial value. If you're coming from the IP side, did you know that the IP asset are value for the company? Data is also becoming more and more value for the company. So by having the right data, the correct data properly managed, then we can also put this on a balance sheet. And then when we sell a company and say, okay, this is accurate, this is bringing more value to the company. And then focus investment, obviously, and this is more for the marketing side, you investing a lot to promote your brand. If you know to whom you're going to send all of these messages, then you will be focusing on the right target, and you will get a return on investment. So really three benefits that will be underlying all of this compliance program or efforts that you're putting in place. What has changed over the last years? A quick overview on GDPR and the new federal act. So Switzerland is having a new act coming into force probably into 2022. You know all of this obligation, nothing new. The revised federal act will also take along the same obligation. They might be rewarded a bit differently to have the Swiss finish, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. 2 points I would like to mention here. The DPO, we've been talking a lot about data protection officer in Europe. Companies have invested in this position internally. In Switzerland, according to the new law, there is no obligation to have a DPO, but don't get too excited. You still need to have an expert internally who understands, who knows where the data is coming from, what the company is doing, what providers the company is using, etc. So I would say it's kind of, we have the feeling it's a win, but you still need to have a team or an expert internally. In terms of sanction, the approach is also rather different under Swiss law. We are very far away from the 4% of the turnover of a company at global level. The limit here is set as 250,000 Swiss francs, about 220,000 euro, but it's put on the head of management. So we're here talking about a penal clause that is targeting directors. So it's very important here, if you're in charge of compliance, talk to your management team and say, you know, if there is an issue, there might be a complaint in front of the tribunal, and then you will be called in. As I mentioned, the implementation phase is you know, coming, but coming slowly, and we hope to have a date for next year. So why are companies fined? We thought that it could be also interesting to show you a few cases. We looked at 2020 and looked at the highest fine, but it doesn't mean that other companies, smaller companies, might not be fined. Maybe the amount will be a bit lower, but the criteria taken by the authorities is exactly the same. If we talk about Google, they were challenged because they're not giving enough information on the consent in the consent and privacy policy. So too many things, but not, let's say, really targeted to how do I consent and for what. And they were also challenged because the authorities thought they were lacking. Control was lacking for the user, controlling, accepting, where do I give my consent and where not. The second case is H&M, and here we're not talking about final user, we're talking about employees. It was a case where H&M was running some interviews, recording the interviews with employees coming back from holidays or sick leave, having a talk with their manager, and of course gathering through these videos, you had a lot of information that was gathered about sensitive data, personal life aspect that was going against data minimization. The fact that it was recorded also was a big issue, because then a lot of people could have access to that, and they were fined quite a high amount when you also think that it was really targeting employees, or the respect of the employees' private life. Another example that is also accurate for marketing teams is where do you, or how do you send your marketing and promotional messages? Here, TIM, or TIM, which is the telecommunication or Italian telecommunication company, was fined with a large amount of money because they were sending overly aggressive marketing messages to too many data subjects and probably didn't have an accurate list internally of who consented to what. And we're also not offering this control, the opt-in, that we also mentioned with Google. The fourth example I'd like to mention here is about British Airways, who was attacked by cyber squatters who created a spoofed website, so diverting the British Airways users and clients to a fake website and gathering a lot of personal information. Here the authorities said, you're lacking security measures on your website, and therefore cyber squatters were able to come and then pick up, I would say, the names, millions of users' details, by the way, and then create a data breach. And the last example that is also relevant in terms of acquisition or merger. In case of Marriott was held liable for a data breach that occurred on a newly acquired company, Starwood. So Marriott acquired Starwood, didn't do the proper due diligence in the Starwood system, and a breach was found a couple of years later. Marriott got fined. So here we also talk about the responsibility. And as I said, it's not just the amount of the fine that is important, is what is being raised by the authorities, where can we work on to avoid that kind of risk. And to finish again and lead to this, where do you put your efforts? I would raise five buckets. The first one is the pilot. You need to have a pilot in the plane. It can be a data protection team. It can be one expert, but someone needs to know, be accountable for making sure everything is flowing and we know the source, the third parties, and the usage of the data. The mapping is important. It will give you, let's say, an impression, or let's say a good view on the data flows, who is involved, what providers, do we have the right contracts, do we maybe also change, who we're using. Priorities, this depends on your industry. If you're in B2B environment, then you will not have the same obligation as if you're talking to end consumers. You also need to set your priorities every year according to your objectives. Here we're talking about marketing campaigns. What is your plan for 2021? Are you buying a new CRM solution? Do you want to retarget all your database because you want to clean it? So those are priorities that need to be taken into account and then assessed according or with, I would say, the privacy eyes on. And the risk again depends on your privacy, on your industry, and the campaigns that you're running. Risk are always there. So you cannot say, oh, we've done the job in 2018, we're good. No, they're always coming. Cyber attacks are always coming, tools are changing, and so you really need to assess that. And the last point, processes and IT. This is also something that needs to be alive in the company. We need to talk about retention of data, how long we keep it. Again, in marketing, do we have this old Excel sheet? Do we have this legacy system where we know we have data, we don't use it, but no one really cares? Okay, then at some points close it. Make sure you know who access the database and the data. In a small company, for example, it might not be that well ruled, so everyone has access to the shared drive. That's also a risk for breach, for example. So processes are important, and I would also say processes for marketing. Marketing needs to be involved in this thinking. It's not just a compliance issue. It's not a legal issue. It's not, monopoly of the legal team, for example, but really making sure marketing understand it. And then I will give the word to Alice, because she will explain to you why marketing can do something, and then if marketing is involved, then we are also raising the trust in the brand. So to you, Alice.
Okay, thank you very much, Caroline. That was great, thank you. So I want to start by asking a question. So Caroline has given us a recap of what the law is, but some of us, me included, might have the feeling that maybe it's gone a bit too far. I mean, after all, really, is the law fair on businesses? I mean, we don't have to agree to privacy policies and cookie settings when we enter real life stores. We also have our behaviour in stores monitored. Well, not in the recent past, obviously, because we've had to shop from home or not shop. But in normal situations, our behaviour is closely monitored by shop owners, businesses, in order to improve the shopping experience, i.e. to sell more. So they'll move products around if they observe that people don't see key products that are important. So let's kick off this part of the presentation by asking what you think. So Tamara is going to paste into the chat a link to a Google survey, which is really simple, and I really don't want you to overthink it. This is just for a little bit of fun to see where you stand on this question about whether GDPR and all the stuff we have to comply with has gone too far. So just give the most spontaneous answer you can. So I'll let you do that for a few seconds until we get some results in. So Tamara, when you're ready, perhaps you could give us a flavour of what the audience feels about this topic.
We have 5, 6. So the responses are coming in, Alice. We'll just wait another couple of seconds, and it looks like okay, 11. Okay, so we have yes, definitely, 45.5%, tied with no, I think it helps my business, 45.5%, and 9.1% don't know. So there you go.
Very, very balanced, very balanced.
Yes.
So, but of course, as half of you disagree that it's gone too far, and half of you agree that it is fine. So the point is, actually, it doesn't really matter whether we're skeptical or not skeptical. It's immaterial. The law is the law, but it is rested on the premise that data privacy really does matter. So I actually am of the personal opinion that it has gone too far, but I completely agree with the underlying efforts, the reason why the law is there, because data privacy does matter. And why does it matter? Well, we all know this. We all need protection from cyber criminals, rogue operators and hackers. And my mother, about 4 years ago, was conned out of £35,000 by some cyber criminals. She got the money back, actually, but only because my sister is a consumer credit lawyer. And of course, the other reason why we need protection is from unscrupulous marketers. And Caroline listed a few of those. They're actually really good brands, really well-known brands, but they get it wrong, and they actually put our data at risk. I mean, the example from the Italian telecommunications company is a really good one, where they were over marketing at people, and it's interesting that they got fined for that. Because there's actually nothing more irritating than that from a customer point of view. And the reason, of course, is that what we do online is so easy to trace and so easy to exploit if these safeguards are not there. And again, back to the first slide I showed you, once we've walked out of a shop, that's it. Unless we've left our data with some kind of loyalty program, we are free to go wherever we like, and nobody knows what our next move is. But there's a problem, and that problem is that people don't engage with privacy policies in general. So I've just a silly question, really, but I wonder how many of you would be prepared to hand over your firstborn child. Now, that's a bit of a provocative statement to make, but you might be interested to know that in a survey conducted by academics in North America, 98% of survey participants did just that. It was part of an experiment to see how far consumers would be conned into going. So obviously there was no malice behind it. It was just to see whether people really do read the small print. And the answer is absolutely no. The study is called The Biggest Lie on the Internet, and the details will be in the handout for you to read. It's a really interesting case study. So let's just ask you another question then, that Tamara's going to put another poll into the chat. So do you consent to policies without reading? You might be interested to know that 97% of 18 to 34-year-olds do not read. They do not read without the consent policies. I don't think that's at all. That's a survey that Deloitte has done, and there's a lot more really interesting information again on this link, which will be in the handout. But what's also clear from the studies is that COVID is really accelerating this engagement as digital transformation has really sped up due to the fact that we've all had to function much more online than we were before, at a faster pace. And the other thing, of course, is that we're sharing more and more personal data from more and more devices. So I sit here at my desk, I've got my phone, my iPad, my iMac, I've got my Apple Watch, I've got my laptop, all of which contain and share my personal data. My phone even controls my car. So we are really dependent on these devices, and we are now prepared to share more and more stuff because it's so convenient. So quick study then, Tamara, please go ahead and ask the question, do you consent to policies without reading them?
I popped it in there about a minute ago, and we have 10 responses in, and just wait one more second. I think, yeah, 11 again. Okay, so what we have, yes, all of for the yes people who read all of it, 27.3%. For I glance at the page, 54.5%, and I just click agree, 18.2%.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. I have to confess here that I'm probably in that 18% that just clicks, and I'm sitting here telling you that it's important. And I think that's quite an important admission of mine, because I do think it's important, and yet I find it annoying. So why does this happen? It happens because policies are long and impenetrable, very difficult to read. And I think this is the key to the reason why why I would be part of that 18%, is because I think we're over asked to accept, if I'm really honest. And it becomes an irritant. So we become blasé and too trusting. So I think these are really the problems that that we all face going forward with this topic. And what I do believe is that the good intentions of GDPR are in jeopardy. I mean, that's probably a subject for another conversation at a separate time. It would be interesting to debate with anybody who would like to on that. So please let us know if you'd like to talk about that in the future. But that's in a nutshell, those are the reasons. So what is the answer? It really boils down to what Caroline at the beginning introduced, the idea of trust. And you get trust through by showing respect and by making the content convenient. And of course, backing that up with actually doing what you say you're going to do. So those are the principles. So let's have a quick look at respect. Caroline also made a very interesting point. Data has a monetary value. And I think people forget this quite a lot. And the really important thing from a brand point of view is when you're showing respect is to acknowledge that data privacy has your data has a currency and your privacy has currency. So the tone that you adopt should be sort of like this. We think that your data privacy is important. So this is a very key point. So you should too. So this is the other side of it. It's not just about the brands showing respect. It's about brands encouraging individuals to to acknowledge that they should also take an interest. Don't just click OK, engage with it. And then the final kind of tip here in terms of tonal approach to showing respect is see how transparent and responsible we are when it comes to the usage of your data. So if you show this kind of respect through this kind of approach, you will build the trust that Caroline was talking about at the beginning. So this is really absolutely fundamental. So the second part of the equation is convenience, making it easy. And this is, I think, where many brands fall down. Don't just tick the box in terms of legal compliance. Again, Caroline made that point very clear at the beginning. It's really an opportunity for you to show that you're a good web citizen. And that translates then into value for your business, as she said, on the bottom line. So it really does raise the profile of your business if you are seen to be taking this stuff seriously. So don't just tick the box, leverage it. And you can do that by applying principles of good UX. UX means user experience. So that is things like content structure, the way you lay out the pages, and the content elements that you use on those pages. So making it visually easy, and easy to read and easy to digest through the way that it's laid out. The language and tonality is also absolutely key. Part of that is an easy reading level, not to patronize your audience, but to actually be convenient for them. Don't make them decode language and complicated legal text, because that's going to be a total turnoff. And then finally, and it's part of the UX really, it's make the design appealing. Make that design reinforce the tonal approach you're adopting. And I think in a couple of seconds, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of brands which have done really a good job with this. So if you do this, if you make it convenient and accessible, you will then reinforce the trust that you start off with your tonal approach. So let's have a quick look at two examples of brands who really do show respect and make it easy for their customers. We will also have a look after that at one example of a brand that really doesn't, but there are more examples in the handout that we're going to provide. So the first one, oh, I can hear the groan. I know you're all on mute, but I can hear you all groaning. Oh, not another Apple example. Well, I'm sorry for that, but actually we're using it because it really is an excellent case study. And it should be up here on these slides, because not just because Tamara and I are Apple enthusiasts. That's not the case at all. It's that in the cold light of day, they really do it right. So let's just quickly analyze this in terms of respect. They actually give agency, which is this fundamental thing about we take it seriously, you should take it seriously too. That's the agency part. They actually elevate data protection to be a fundamental human right. So it can't really get more respectful in terms of and more weighty than that. They also offer an incredible level of convenience. It's clear to read, it's appealing, it's well designed. It really reinforces their brand message. And they really then can leverage it as a core pillar of their brand. So if you're looking at the screenshots very quickly, the ones with the black background are obviously privacy as it's applied to the usage of Apple devices and the software. So like the Apple Wallet and all those things that we use. Then so this is not exactly a privacy policy per se in terms of the legal requirement. This is how they leverage privacy into the products that they sell. Their actual privacy policy on their website, if you want to go and check it out, is really also follows these principles very well as well. So they also provide this level of respect and agency, make it easy to navigate and easy for you to find what information you're looking for. So if you want a best practice example, just head on to the privacy policy on the Apple website. And just to kind of reinforce that, I'm not quite sure how many brands really do and have been for so long advertising this key brand pillar. This is something they plaster on TV, on billboards, on the sides of buildings, so they actually are shouting to people. This is a key differentiator for us. This is how Apple looks after you. So it's really a kind of extreme example, because this is really not what most brands are doing. So you might be surprised to see easyJet coming up here as another example. And what we Tamara and I both really like this, because this is just this screenshot from the cookie preferences pop-up, which is obviously important. But what we like about it is that tonally it's clear, easy, and unpressured. So they're not saying, yes, okay, you can see that they want you to accept all cookies, but they are also giving you agency here in an unpressured way to let you choose. And the tone of the copy is very, very clear and easy to read. So when you look at their actual privacy policy, which I think we will include in the handout, you'll see that they use really nice graphics and easy to read copy and a very good page layout. So it's also a very good example to use if you want to get inspiration. You can see it actually in the background of this slide here. My only slight skepticism is that, having tried to get a refund out of easyJet in the past, I'm wondering whether they really do live up to it, but I don't know. It's been a long time since I got on a plane. So let's have a quick look at the not even trying, the worst. And you might be not surprised to see that Microsoft comes up here. And really, I don't think I need to dwell on this slide, but this is the privacy policy for the website. And all I can say is, who would ever read 129 pages of legal text in their privacy policy? This is not a privacy policy that's designed for customers. This is to protect them when they get sued. So that's, I think, quite insightful. And then the other thing here is a screenshot on the left from an email that was sent to Tamara from Microsoft, at the bottom of which there is a message that says unsubscribe at any time. So and instead of a nice,
we're losing you, Alice.
she got this page. Sorry.
She's freezing.
Tamara, do you want to just finish the story?
Yeah. So just what Alice was trying to say there is that I received this, and what's interesting is you click on subscribe, and what you generally expect to see is to see unsubscribe and not preferences, to make somebody question and try to decode what it's all about. And so after much figuring, I realized it is the unsubscribe. So it's not a great example. I think, is Alice back now? Yes, she's unfrozen.
Sorry about that. But actually, it would lead to a loss of trust, because my expectation was Tamara's expectations were absolutely not met. And this is a key tenet of user experience: always meet the user's expectations. And then the final insult, I think, Tamara, is they still continue to email you, right? So your preferences were in fact ignored. So hopefully you can hear me still. And very quick summary then, key takeaways to share. So the number one is see data privacy as an opportunity to engage positively with customers. So that's, whatever you think, whatever your private views are, you heard mine, it's still an opportunity for a brand to leverage. Make it feel important, give it currency. So acknowledge that it is your personal data is a currency, has value, and therefore show respect for that. I think Microsoft, you can see, do not do that. make the content digestible, easy and appealing. Well, you saw 2 really nice examples of that. There are plenty others. I'm sure you will be able to find good ones as well. We're going to include them in the handout. And then finally, live up to the promises you make. So if you have an unsubscribe button on a link on your email and somebody unsubscribes, don't then keep on emailing them. You know, this is actually something you could be fined for. So that's me done. And I think we have some time left for questions. Is that right?
Yes,
So.
and I see someone's typing, so definitely go in and put your questions. I do have a question to kick us off from one of the people that couldn't attend today. So I just think and it's a question for Caroline. We are a global B2B company, and we do a lot of business across Europe, including the UK and Switzerland. How do privacy policies accommodate certain legal requirements that might be unique in a given country? Do they require separate sections? Do you need to specifically mention that you are abiding by X regulations? So I guess they mean GDPR, FADP, and then list them? Do they need to be included?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's a question that is on the table of a lot of global companies. I would say if the main markets are Europe, UK, and Switzerland, it's easier than if you were going to take in Singapore and the US. My advice is to have one set of clauses with covering all the main principles, and then making sure, I would say at the end, that there is a reference to the seat of the company and then where the activities are taking place, and make a reference to, for example, the authorities or to specifics of the law. Again, I would say in Europe we're kind of lucky because we are aligned with the main principle. GDPR is the golden rule still. So, you know, if the companies are abiding to GDPR, then we're reaching a really nice level. Luckily, the Swiss Federal Act is not going to divert so much from the principle. So if we have a GDPR compliant, let's say, privacy, then it will also be fine with the Swiss Act. We need to make a reference to Switzerland, but it shouldn't. My advice was like, you shouldn't have, you know, one set and then 5 other pages for each country, because will be, like Alice was saying, no one will understand it.
Great, thanks for that. We have a question from Guido. In legal terms, say by GDPR, within what time frame is marketing related data supposed to be discarded or deleted? That's a really good question.
Yeah, so you always need to have a purpose and a valid and accurate purpose to keep data, personal data. In terms of marketing, as long as you can show that the recipient is interested in your messages, that the emails are open, that it has not unsubscribed, then you can keep this data. Then you need to also have in your processes a certain time where you say, after 2 years, after 3 year maximum, we haven't heard of this customer, of this client, so we will delete the data. So you have a bit of time after, I would say, the last interaction with your messages or business to keep it, but you cannot keep it forever. And it's really good to have this time in your processes, because if authorities are coming to you, then you can say, yes, we know, we're keeping an eye on it, we will keep it for 2 years, for example. 2 or 3 years is usually an acceptable time.
Okay, great. See Guido's typing a response to that. So, but maybe while he's doing that, there's another short question, which is, we work in the B2B field, and we have prospects and customers who we occasionally send emails to. How far do we have to go in implementing, as we don't have personal data, just their work data? Do these laws affect us as strictly?
Yeah. So we could say they don't affect as strictly, but they are applicable because those are personal data, whether it's professional or private data. As Alice was mentioning, I think also that GDPR is really protecting the rights of the individual, so our rights of privacy in our private life, in our kind of private interaction. But obviously, professional personal data is personal data. There is a possibility to use this data based on the legitimate interest of the company to do business, to do promotion of the services. In B2B, this is very much accepted. But again, there must be an assessment from the B2B company. We have this prospection list. We are doing marketing with this prospection list. And then we assess the risk. We know it's only professional contacts. We gather them in a clean way, I would say, legally, etc. So there is an assessment on the legitimate interest needs to be done, but definitely don't stop doing promotion because you're afraid, because that also would be harmful for your business.
Okay, great. And Guido's follow-up question, do I have to state the specific time frame, i.e. in the privacy statement? So I believe that's then looping back to his question about marketing relating data deleted, discarded.
Yes, theoretically you do, but only do it if you can commit to it, if you can live up to your promise. Because if you say we will delete it after 2 years and after 5 years it's still there, then you will get complaints and then you need to handle them. So always when you write a privacy notice, you need, I mean, it's not just a lawyer writing it, then it is really the marketing, sales, operation, IT commenting and saying, yes, this we can do, this we cannot do. Because sometimes we cannot delete, sometimes we can only anonymize. So also don't say something that is not true, because you will also then indirectly misuse the consumer and lose the trust.
Yeah, and that goes back to living up to your promises that I was talking about as well.
Okay, and I see we have time for one more question. I see Sonia is typing a question. So we'll just wait for her question to come through. And then what we'll, just as because some people joined after we said our greetings and our hellos, just so that you know, we are sending out a handout with all of the information from today, plus some additional information, and as well as the recording. So here we go. Linda asks, similar question to the first one. As a global company, applying the strictest rule principle on a website, app, etc., you might be limiting your activities, your possibilities to collect data in the US. What is the recommendation in that case?
Yes, that's for sure a question for marketing. You can have a different set of rules, but it goes back to my point. Are you following the law or are you following your company vision? So what is the company vision? And then if the company vision is saying we do fair marketing, then maybe you will get to a stricter point and say, okay, this is the rule we apply everywhere. But definitely, if US is a big market and you know you can do some other marketing campaigns that you couldn't run as such in Europe, then yes, please do that and then communicate with the legal team. This is why you need some kind of adaptation. But it's a little bit harder to handle, but it's kind of, a balance of interest. Do we need to do this? And then do we need to go to be more active, let's say a little bit more intrusive or not? So it's really, it's not just about writing the notice, it's sitting down and saying, what do we need? Where do we want to go? What is the company values on that?
Okay, great. Yes, and she just had, Linda added a note that she's working in the big countries, US, France, Germany, UK, and I guess Canada, I guess that is CA. So that's great, thank you. And I see Sonia's still typing there. If it comes in another minute, there we go. Sonia, we are also a global B2B company having websites for the different countries, continents. What happens is what happens if an EU customer is going to the US website to gather information about our products? Is it then an issue for the customer or us? So they have different websites. They have a website for Germany, a global website, I guess, and a US website.
Yeah, it depends if it's an informative website or if the website is really selling to consumers. So what do you need, or clients? What you need to ask is, whom am I targeting with this website? If the website is targeting the US customers, then it's fine to follow the US rules. If I am looking at the website from Switzerland, yeah, that's okay. If I have the information, what cookies are used, that's really fine. So the law are still territorial. But if the companies start selling the product to the European, let's say from the US website, you can buy the products in Europe, then obviously this website needs to be GDPR compliant. So you also need to look at the residency of the customers, but not the residency of every visitor of the website, because this is going to be quite tricky if you're not targeting this market.
Great. Thank you for that. So with that, we'll wrap up because we promised to make sure that you are all out of here in 45 minutes. But if there is somebody else's question that is popping up as we're shutting down, then we will be sure to answer that for you because I do see there's a couple other people typing. So you can put those in there and we can pop an answer back to you. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming out to our first joint webinar that we've done. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.